Raina Campbell, your Chief Dream Driver, and welcome to the No Parking Podcast, where through conversations and discussions with creators like yourself, we'll find interesting approaches to help you take your dreams out of park, put them in drive, and ride towards success. Hey, Dream Drivers. Welcome to episode 48 of the Dreams and Drive No Parking Podcast. And today our guest is the talented Levantay, who is a singer, certified success coach, author, college professor, and the host of Levantay TV. And we're going to be talking about in today's episode the importance of nurturing your gifts and finding your voice. Levantay's story is so inspirational, and I know that you guys listening in will really be moved by the power of her words and by the power of her inspiration. And I say that because honestly, just by talking to her, I was so moved to reflect on my own life. So I know that you guys will feel that as well. One of the things that we talk about in today's episode that is really, really enlightening is just why when you align your work and your gift, you are tapping into your light. And that energy fuels and will fund your earthly mission. I know that sounds very deep, but Levantay really dives deep into what she means by that. Some of the other things that we talk about in today's episode include what happened when Levantay lost her voice and how she found it again. And I mean that both literally and figuratively. We also talk about what happened the day that Levantay quit her job at CBS, a top media company, in order to pursue her calling full time. We talk about the power to create your own reality, why Levantay feels the word fear or that feeling really isn't real. The importance of moving in order to really see a shift and change in your life. We also talk about the importance and the power of having a strong support system and investing in creative partnerships. So this is going to be an episode that is really jam-packed with a lot of stuff, but I know that you guys listening in will really, really come away from it feeling fulfilled. But before we get into hearing Levantay share her story, just want to say, remember to subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, wherever you're listening into. Subscribing to us will make sure that you get your podcast episodes every week. If you want today's show notes, all you have to do is visit dreamsanddrive.com and click on episode 48. And if you want to join our Dreams and Drive community and get access to exclusive content and as well as our weekly No Parking newsletter, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. Last but not least, make sure you are following us on social at Dreams and Drive. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Follow us, tag us, leave us a message in our comments, whatever. I really love engaging each week with all you guys listening in, so make sure to go follow us on social. I hope you guys enjoy today's episode, and we will chat at the outro. Hi, Levantay. Thank you so much for being a guest on today's episode of Dreams and Drive.
Hey, Raina, it is my pleasure. I love Dreams and Drive, and I just love the vibe here in the community, so I am honored to be here.
You know, I was going to have to bring you on the show eventually.
Eventually.
So for you guys listening in, Levantay and I actually go way, way back to our CBS days when I was an intern over at CBS Corporation, and you were working in sales, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Network, advertising, sales.
And we actually met because one of my supervisors at the time mentioned to Levantay that I wanted to go to a Usher concert that you were going to, and it was part of CBS This Morning, or what was the show for CBS?
It was, the early show at the time.
The early show, okay.
Became This Morning.
The early show used to do concerts in the summer, and it was Usher. So you were like my chaperone or my buddy for the Usher concert. So that's how we met, and we developed a relationship ever since then, which I think has been really, really good for both of us.
Yeah, it was so funny, when, your supervisor came to me and then I met you outside and I was like, it's just been like, we just clicked,
Yes.
I brought you over there, put you in the front, had such a good time. And, it's just been, ever since.
Yes, I still have those Usher pictures on my desktop. Maybe I'll put some in the show notes. Just
please.
Proof to make sure it really happened. It did. You might even be in some. I'll have to go back and see.
I might. I don't know. I stayed in the back and I put you guys in the front because my nieces were there too. And so yeah, if you have them, I'd like to see them.
So let's get into our session here today. And as you know, the first question that I love to ask our dream drivers, or ask our guests, I should say, is what inspired you as a child? So if I had to say, who was Levantay the kid, what would you answer?
I was the kid who my mom thought was crazy because I had imaginative friends. And well, the way that started is because I'm the last of four, and my closest sibling is 9 years older than me, and he's a boy. So I had no one to play with. So I had lots of imaginary friends, and I remember one day I was at the dinner table with the chair next to me, and my brother was going to sit, and I was like, no, 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 Tina's sitting there. My mom is like, who is Tina? She's my friend. And my mom was like, this girl is crazy. She went to my godmother, and she's like, you better send her cousin over to play with her because this child has imaginary friends and I don't know what's going on. But I had a really, really vibrant imagination. I loved to read and words became vivid to me. And I remember as a child, we had like this outside veranda. It was like a little elevated stage. And we had a huge property. So I grew up in Jamaica in the country, huge property and lots of grass. And I used to get on the stage and I would sing my heart out. And I would imagine that the tall grass were people just waving in the wind. And I just felt like this oneness. Even as a child, I knew that there was something that I was here to do. I think, it's so funny thinking back at that right now. I think that's like the prevalent energy that I had as a child.
How do you think that energy translated to you as an adult?
Wow. I think, growing up, I forgot about all those things, but I think that imagination is the reason why I'm able to do all the things that I do, the writing, the singing, the coaching. I love being in the presence of people. I love the stage. And not just the idea of being on stage, but the idea of being in community with people. I think that has never left to me, and I think that is part of my gift.
So you mentioned that you grew up in Jamaica, but you eventually migrated to the United States. When did you come up here, and what was that whole journey like for you? Like leaving your homeland and coming to America, what was that like?
Ooh, that was a massive journey. I left Jamaica. I came here just after 9/11. So I have been living in the U.S. for about coming on past 16 years now. So I came here fresh out of college in Jamaica. And my parents were here. So the story goes like this. When I was 8 years old, my parents migrated to the United States, and they left me with my eldest sister, who was 22 at the time. She came home to take care of me and my siblings, and she had a baby at the time. So I had my first niece, who was like 1 year old. And so my parents migrated at 8 years old. I never saw my parents again until I was around 17. So we were apart for a good 10, 13, I can't even count, about 13 years. You didn't see them
visit? They didn't come visit, or you really didn't see them literally?
Didn't see them. But the thing is, it's not like they deserted us. My parents were farmers and they were doing well. And then after a while that wasn't working. And my mom was like, how am I going to provide for my family? So she came to America and she became a stay-at-home helper in these well-off people's house in Westchester, and she just took care of their children so that she could take care of us financially. And so, but the thing, I was 8 years old and I was the youngest, and no one thought I would understand, so no one told me that my parents wouldn't be coming back. I was used to them going away for 3-4 months at a time, traveling, working, coming back, but then I wasn't used to them being gone for so long. And then after a year, it's funny, it's going to lead into this whole other thing. It's so important, this whole childhood question too, because after a year, I started losing my voice a lot. And it wasn't until I was much older that I made the connection of what was happening. Even as a child, I felt like I couldn't ask why my parents left. I felt like maybe I did something bad why they left. And so I started losing my voice a lot. And then when I went to I was in primary school, so I was like in grade 3. When I went to grade 4, I met like my very outspoken friend, and we went to high school together. And then I found my voice again, and I realized that that was sort of like in high school. I was always on stage. I was head of student government. I was always speaking, and when I graduated college here and I started my first job out of college, I started losing my voice again. And
what job was that?
That was when I first started at CBS. So after I started in production and I went over to sales, and I had just this bad experience of having this narcissistic boss, and I started losing my voice. And a friend of mine invited me to a professional development thing downtown, and I went, and my friend didn't show up, of course. So I was there, and the lady was talking afterwards. She was done. She was like, "Do you guys want to introduce yourself?" And at the time, I couldn't even speak, so I was like, "Well, great." So I got up and I tried to say my name and she was like, "What's wrong?" And I told her I've been sick and losing my voice a lot. And she's like, in my experience, when people are losing their voice a lot, sometimes it means that they're in a situation where they feel stifled, or they feel like they are not in control of their destiny. And she said, you really need to listen to your voice. And so I made the connection even as a child then, and I realized that my body and my life tend to speak to me, and my losing my voice meant that I really need to take control of my life. And at the same time, I realized that my voice also is my gift. As weird as it might sound, it took sort of like that trauma for me to recognize that my power is also the thing that will always warn me when I'm off the path.
I love that you said that your power is the thing that will also warn you when you're off the path. And I think that's something that a lot of us dream drivers, we don't necessarily understand, or we aren't necessarily in tune with that. You know what I mean? A lot of us may feel like, I think we were talking about this in our conversation, because for dream drivers listening in, you can also listen to or watch my interview with Levantay on her show, Levantay TV, which we'll link to in the show notes. But I think that whole idea of finding your voice is one that can take some people their entire lives, right?
Yeah.
So what tips would you have for the person who's struggling to really figure out what is that gift and what is the thing that they need to get aligned with?
Yeah, I think, that woman telling me to listen to my life was such a catalyst for me, because it led me down this rabbit hole. Because at the time I was young, I was like, what is this thing? And I started reading all these books, and they're like, find your life purpose and that will make it all okay, and this self-help stuff. And I was looking and I couldn't find it, and I was confused, because I love to do a lot of things and I'm great at doing a lot of things. And I realized that instead of looking for this big life purpose, right, that I cannot seem to wrap my head around, why not just follow my gifts? And then I realized that the energy surrounding your desire to use your gift is like a promise that you've made to yourself. It's like a divine promise to use your gifts. And it connects back again to my childhood, because even as a child, I always felt that there was something that I needed to do. And I always felt that I owe it to myself, like when you make a promise to yourself.
Yes.
And so my advice to dream drivers who really want to find that path, and they're confused and they're trying to figure out what this thing might be, especially to those in their 20s, which is a really, really tumultuous, confusing time, I would say truly, truly settle into your spirit and try to remember that promise to yourself. And that promise surrounds your desire to do something, your desire to give your gifts. I was listening to one of my favorite spiritual teachers, Michael Beckwith, the other day, and he mentioned that the word human stems from the Sanskrit word amen, which means dispenser of divine gifts. And that just totally gave me goosebumps, because I was like, as human beings, we're here to dispense our divine gifts. And then something else came to me. We dispense those gifts by the work we do, because it's a work, it's a service. And so when you're trying to find that path, think about the work that you do, what you're valued for, what you value. Follow the energy surrounding your desire to do something. And that thing is usually your gift.
So what did that look like for you? Because I know eventually you moved on from CBS and you really, I want to say you really dove into your gift. So maybe walk our dream drivers through the second part of your journey, pre Levantay, before Levantay really blossomed into what you are now.
Yes, before the blossoming, when I was tight in a bud trying to figure it out, So even my journey at CBS was just really a catalyst. I mean, I met so many wonderful people at that place, including you. And so when I started, it was just fresh out of college with all these dreams and ready for it and thinking, okay, now I got the dream job. Being the first in my family to go to college, it was great that even during the recession, I was able to work for a great corporation, and so I felt truly blessed. But then I looked around and I realized that I totally didn't fit in here. I was doing something that they could hire someone tomorrow to do, even though I made the job my own, because I have that tendency. And I would advise all of your dream drivers, whenever you are working for someone in a job, make it your own, because you want to build that value so that if eventually you got to move on, you got to do your own thing, you have something to take with you. But going back to that experience there, when I started out with just a terrible, terrible boss. And he was, there's a funny story. So one day I was at my desk and he printed behind my computer where I sat. So I heard something churning out and I knew I only printed one page. So I thought it was his. So I grabbed it and I said I'd just bring it into him. And for some reason I glanced at it. I wasn't trying to read it, but he was researching traits of a narcissist. And I was like, oh my God, he knows what he is. But
I'm sorry.
He was so mad, Raina, when I brought it into him, because he thought, okay, maybe she looked at it. But, in that space where I was working for someone who just had no idea, who was so tight and controlling, I realized that I wasn't in the right place. And it is just as important to know what you don't want to do as it is to know what you want to do. Because in that moment, I realized I don't want to be here. I don't want to work for this person. I don't want to be this person eventually. And a funny story, and about 2 years into working for that guy, I gave him a Christmas gift, Marianne Williamson's book, A Return to Love. I gave him that book because he was mean and terrible, but there's one thing he always did. Every Christmas, he gave me $100 card to Lord and Taylor. That's one thing. I guess it's his way of showing his appreciation. Mm-hmm. But I gave him that book and I never saw him again. The next thing I heard from him was an email when I heard that he had resigned or some stuff had happened, which I won't go into. He had resigned and he sent me an email telling me, thank you for my spirit and all of that stuff. But I never heard from him again. But in that moment, I learned that everything is here to teach us something about ourselves. It was a testing within myself to find my own strength and my own power to know what I want and to know what I stand for and to know how much I will take. So, that was that experience there at CBS. It was really, really good. But then over time, I stayed there for a little longer because I had another boss and things were different, but I knew I wasn't supposed to be there. So I was writing music at night and doing all that stuff. And then I realized that it was time for me to really physically move out of that space if I was going to evolve. So I started my coach training and I decided that I would save up all the money that I could save and start building my online business and start putting out my music. And so it took a while for me. It took several years while working in that job to sort of segue into the freedom of working for myself. But as I said, it's just as important to know what you don't want as it is to know what you do want for yourself.
That is so, so true, because I think a lot of times we're so scared of making mistakes, and we're
Mm.
also scared of failing. So a lot of times we think when we, have this job that we think is going to be our dream job, and then it becomes not a dream job. We see that as a failure, but what you're saying is we really need to see what we can learn from that. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe that experience is one that now has equipped you with a lifelong lesson and a lifelong toolkit, that you can now use that to help you navigate any future situation. So I love that you said that. But
Yeah.
one thing you also mentioned was the whole idea of making it your own and how that can help you as you're navigating through. What did
Mm-hmm.
you do specifically to really make the job your own and one that you could tolerate?
Yeah, well, for me, one of the things I did was I bought myself flowers every now and again. But no, but really, you look for things that aren't happening yet. You look for different, because I was young and my bosses were a lot older. So I looked for like the tech stuff that they couldn't do. And I tried to fit myself in to sort of show them how to do it, try to automate things that weren't automated. There was this like old interoffice process that they had, and I tried to change that up so that I could make my own mark. Because a lot of the times, what corporate tries to make us into machines so that we're easily replaceable. And if you fit into that cog and you're just rolling on that wheel like the hamster, then you can get fired tomorrow and they would never care. But as you take these jobs, and I know that out of college, we sometimes have to go and work for people. We don't just jump out and be entrepreneurs. And I want you to be okay with wherever you are in your journey and to take as much from it as you can to carry you over into where you want to be. So I looked for opportunities that didn't exist and try to make it my own. At the time when my terrible boss left, I started working for his boss, who's the lady that worked for him for like 30 odd years, had just retired. And she taught me so many things that I was miles ahead of everyone else in that position. And so he took me on to work for him. So I merged two positions. They were actually going to hire for her position, but I merged it and I made it into something that never existed before. And so there are no dream jobs unless you create them. There are no dream jobs unless you create them. And if you really need to do that job for money, then you really need to set yourself apart as you work on really working through your gifts. I think that if you're an entrepreneur, if you're an employee, whoever you are, whatever you're doing, the ultimate thing that I advise and that I think of in my own life is to make sure that I'm working through my gifts. And so this is something that we forget a lot of the times when we go to college and get the job and we think we're just going to make that money. You stand to make a lot more money if you work in alignment with who you were born to be rather than trying to go in the opposite direction. And that's what I was trying to do when I was in that media space, feeling like, okay, this is what I've always wanted to do, to be in media, right? But now I'm here and I feel like my own voice, my authentic expression was being blocked.
Did you think that if you had a different role within the company, your voice would have had a place to blossom, or do you think you really had to just do something totally different?
I think personally, I had to do something totally different. I am the type of person that needs to work with a certain kind of passion. So money doesn't drive me, although I do believe money is very, very important.
As it
Like the
is,
air we
yes.
breathe, it is. And so I think money is a great thing, and have it, get it, it's good. But for me, the rewards of my work didn't really come from the financial gain. It came from the fulfillment of it. And I feel like there's space there, but I don't, for my own destiny, for what I want to do, I feel like I really had to go out on my own because it was a lesson in faith. And you mentioned that fear of failure. There's a fear of failure, and then there's always the fear of success. There's that loss fear, that gain fear. When you fear failure, it's like what you're going to lose, but then you fear success. You think about what you're going to gain that's going to take that thing away from you. And it was a test in my having faith in what I know, because I've always known that whatever work I did would have to come through using my voice, So for now, where what I do, I use my voice as a platform of empowerment through my Levantay TV, through coaching, through music, and even having transitioned as a college professor, I'm using my voice. And I feel like if I had stayed there, I would not have known my own power to create my own reality. You get it?
Mm-hmm. So what did it feel like the day that you submitted your letter and saying, I'm moving on from this position? Describe me the feeling first, and then talk me through how you did it.
Girl, I had been planning that for years. I used to dream about it. And the day when I did it, it was like, you've been planning this thing and you're so excited and you finally do it. And then people are like, really? You're going to leave us? And then you feel like, oh my God. It was like you build up to do this thing, and then you're like, I didn't know I was so appreciated until the end. You know how that is? Mm-hmm. But it really felt like freedom. It felt like freedom. But at the same time, I had been working through the trepidation. And I don't say fear because I don't believe in fear. I don't believe that fear is real, and we could talk about that a little bit more. But the whole idea of knowing what you know, but then not believing it yet because you haven't seen it. At the time, I knew what I was supposed to do. I know that I would be provided for. I knew that my destiny was set in this next step. But I hadn't seen it, and I didn't believe it yet. So at the same time, I felt this immense freedom, but the uncertainty. And it was so important to build that faith and step out and let it build as you go. But that day, it felt like freedom. And it was funny, I subscribed to Daily Word, and in that day's Daily Word, it said that it was my springtime, It was my time to step out to do something else. And I was like, whoa, the universe has a way to kind of just speak to us when we need it.
That is so true. That's something that I've even seen in my own life. I don't want to make this about me, but sometimes you don't realize that you're going down a certain road. I'll put the road and driving metaphor. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, as you were saying, you don't realize you're already driving to your destination. Like you said, you just can't see it. Like you don't know that around that little curve is going to be the exit sign that says Raina's next chapter or Levantay's next chapter. So that's something that I think a lot of us sometimes don't have enough, is that faith. And whether you believe your faith comes from a higher spiritual being or whatever your source of faith is and your sense of a higher purpose is, I think that's something that really, really guides us and is needed. And when you don't have it, it's kind of like having that invisible backbone, right? Or that invisible force that is keeping you going. So I love that you said that.
Yeah, we speak of faith, right? I just wanted to talk a little bit about faith. Mm-hmm. There's this we're not going to take it to church, but there is this Bible verse that I keep in my spirit, and it's like, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And what was happening just before I stepped out there, I hoped for what I was going to do. I knew that was what I was going to do. I know that was what I was supposed to do. But the evidence hadn't presented itself yet in terms of my belief because I hadn't seen it. And what happens when we start to fear things is in that space where we know these things ought to be true, but the evidence hadn't presented itself yet. We haven't seen it in the world yet. And so we start to think that it's not happening. But as we take the steps, as we continue to drive, the road appears. Just like at night when we're driving our cars, we can only see about 20 feet ahead of us, right? Mm-hmm. But we trust that the road is ahead of us and we keep going, right? And so that's what that's about. And I mentioned earlier that I no longer believe in fear. That's one of the surprising things that I realized about myself over time, because I realized as a performer, as a singer, back in the day, going on stage all the time, and I was a pageant girl, I used to get this gripping feeling just before I go on stage. And one time I went on stage and I totally forgot everything that I was going to say. I did terribly, and I ended up crying, and I was totally upset at myself for that happening. And then I said, I will never let that happen to me again. I realized that feeling just before you do something that's going to take you out of your space, something that is going to stretch you, is what we have learned to call fear. It's something we learn to call fear. And I said to myself, what if I call that thing excitement? What if I call that thing the excitement that I need to get from here to the next space? And the next time I was going on stage, I said, you know what? It's not fear, it's excitement. And I went out there and I killed it. And every time I need to stretch myself, I remind myself that it is not fear. It is only fear if you let it paralyze you. And so that feeling in us is sort of like, and I talk about this on Levantay TV, stepping out of your comfort zone. And over time, I realized that nervous excitement that we have learned to call fear is the necessary anxiety that we need to take the leap from the comfort zone to the next step in our lives. And so I just went on a tangent.
No, that I think that's a perfect segue, because let's pause a little bit. So, what were people in your life at this point saying when you said, "Hey, I'm going to leave CBS and pursue my dreams"? I know you were also moving physically too, right? You're moving to North Carolina from New York City. I think I'm asking you this because I think it's important to talk about support systems in our life as well. There can be positive people, negative people. What was the landscape like for you at this point?
The landscape at that time, my family are very supportive. My sister, she gave up her whole life to be my mama and my daddy, and she was the best mom and dad all my life. So she's always been a rock in my life. And moving from New York all the way to North Carolina at the time, girl, I'd never been to the South to live. That was
that's where the twang is coming from. I'm like, why does Levantay keep going into the Southern twang? I forgot that you're in North Carolina now.
I am. And listen, you don't even hear the patois coming up, but let me check it out for a second, because it's still there. It's not going anywhere.
I know. I'm just messing with
me for a little bit. But, at the time, my family was very supportive. I really needed to make that jump because my husband was here. We had gotten married. So just a little bit of backstory. So my husband's in the military. He is an active duty Marine. We got married in 2013, and 2 weeks after that, he was on a plane to Afghanistan. So we got married, he went to Afghanistan, and I planned on moving in 2014 because I had been saving to leave my job for a while. And so that support system was there. My husband was here, and I was going to be with him. I was back in school doing my MFA, so I was writing a book at the time. So it was like a perfect timing. My family was supportive, but I tried to be very, very careful about who I told my dreams to and who I told what I was doing to, because there were also negative energy around saying how can she leave that job one of my cousins said, listen, my goal is not to be barefoot and pregnant. And, the whole idea of getting married and moving cities to be with your other half and to start a new life, to some people seemed like giving up. And I had to really keep those voices out of my head, because they have a way of making you make inauthentic decisions. right? Because at some point I thought maybe I should just stay here and just try to, do this stuff and but I wouldn't have been happy. And sometimes it's very important for us to move physically, because moving physically puts us in a different energetic space. And coming to the country took me out of the hustle and the bustle of New York. I could think, I could breathe, I could write. I wrote a whole book, which is yet to be released. But I finished my MFA program, transitioned my life, so despite what other people might think, you really have to go from your knowing. You have to go from your knowing, and you have to be careful who you tell your dreams to.
That is something that I forgot who. There was a guest earlier, the podcast episodes that talked about that same very thing, because who you tell your dreams to can poison you, or they can nourish you, right? Mm-hmm. And you may not even realize how that person's feedback may affect you. You know what? I said this in the episode. Oh my god, what's the episode name? It's something about dream catchers. I'm the worst podcast host. Oh my god.
You're the best.
You have to know you know what? I'm gonna just look it up right now, just so that I'm not speaking in vain and I'm not just making things out of my head. But it was kind of knowing who. Okay, I'm going to cut this part. I just really want to make sure.
I just had this thought, and I was talking to one of my coaches at Coachville, and he's so big on this thing, abracadabra, right? And what it means is we create as we speak. And he said, when you're choosing your clients, at the end of the day, your clients choose you and you choose them. And what happens is when you're having that conversation, that energy that meets, you're creating as you speak. So if you're speaking to someone and that energy is not vibrating in a certain way, then you know that you're not supposed to go any further. Like you and I are having this great conversation and we're just going with the energy. It's open, it's free, it's supportive. And so people always say, well, you know yourself by your 5 closest friends, and, pick who you're around. And coming from the corporate culture, that is so sleazy, because I notice how people made friends. They made friends on the up, right? So for me, I made friends with everyone. When my computer broke, the computer guys were there for me first. When the bosses called them, they took forever. When the ear was out at my desk, they came, because I made friends in every single sector, and I made people feel like, they're someone. And so when you think about building your network, you're not just looking for the people who are going to be on the up and up and trying to make friends in that sleazy way, but you're looking for energetic connections of support where you can support someone and someone can support you. Even if you're connecting with an influencer who is miles ahead of you, there is value that you can add to that person so that that person can see you as valuable and want to help you. A lot of the times we make the mistake when we're connecting with influencers to think that, oh my God, I want to ask her to be my mentor. No, you approach that person with what value you can give to them. Look at what they're probably missing in their life. Try to plug a hole, fill that gap for them, and they'll always remember you and they'll always want to help you, and you'll never have to ask.
Can you give us an example of a time that you were able to use those positive vibrations and acting off that energy to build relationships that last?
Yeah, even recently, so I am starting to interview for Levantay TV, and I reached out to some people. I had met some people before, and I reached out to them, and I was like, hey, I want to interview you guys for Levantay TV. But the way that I position that is to be a conduit for their message to get out into the world. The way I position the message is to have a soul conversation, to be a conduit for them to get their message out into the world. So I'm not asking of them. I'm asking to help them to do the thing that they already want to do. So when you're looking for people that you really want to connect with, you want to study them. You want to think about the value that you can bring to them so that you can be valuable to them in their own life. So every time I think about reaching out to an influencer and I have that, and I'm reaching out to someone who I was able to create a great relationship with, and I heard that she's writing a book and I have some experience in that area, and I want to reach out to her and just ask how I can support her as she writes that book. Because I had mentioned something in a meeting, and I know that that thing helped to spark that idea too. So I guess you just look for the value that you bring and always know that you're valuable. And even to influencers who seem to have it all.
And I think another thing is also being genuine with your acts. And I say that because even within the past few months, I've gotten a lot of requests to be on the podcast. Or you might have people who are requesting to be on your show, requesting to write for your blog or connect with you. And I'm pretty sure you can tell when someone has just sent you a copy and pasted template email versus when they actually take the time to connect with you, as you were saying. So that is another thing I want to add, is definitely make sure you're being genuine and ask yourself, be real with yourself. It's like, do you really want to talk to this person, or are you only trying to connect for selfish reasons?
Right.
And I really believe that you can feel a person's energy through an email as well. So definitely be aware of that, because you'll waste a lot of time if you aren't being genuine, because you won't get the results. People can tell when you're, being real about your intentions.
And, you just said that, results. A lot of people wonder why they fall flat in a lot of different things that they're doing, because they're not doing it genuinely. They're not doing it with that heart that is of I just, outside of what I want for myself. So I want to be on your podcast because it's doing so well and I want to get to the world. No, you want to think about what the bigger picture here. How can you add value? You need to do it. People talk about authenticity a lot. And one of my mentors said, I'm so tired of this authentic word. I just feel like we just need to be heart-centric. And that was Sharon Lecter who said that to me. She's like, I'm so tired of this authentic word. We should just be heart-centric. And when I look at how people like her operate, they really go from their heart. And the people who are successful are the ones who go from that space of connection, because human connection is so important. That's why we can feel it even in those copy-pasted emails,
Definitely. So, I want to ask you this, because I don't think we got to touch on it as much, but maybe can you tell our dream drivers what it is that you then decided to do once you left CBS? Because we're talking about you as Levantay, but who is Levantay? What do you offer? What have been the blessings that have come your way since you've really blossomed and pursued that light, that gift of yours?
The biggest blessing was time to truly use my time the way I pleased. Before I left CBS, so I was always doing this. I was doing my coaching certification at the time. I was singing at night and writing music. I was trying to build my business while I was at my job, and it's so important, people. Do not jump ship before you're ready. Try to find, even if you have a miserable job and it pays the bills, find that thing that makes it, that doesn't drive you crazy, right? Find that thing where you can be mindful at your job and give it your best until you get to the next stage. So at the time I was building my business, putting up my website, putting up my little music, doing my little music videos. Remember, Raina?
Yes.
Raina, I'm going to just segue just a little bit. But Raina, as you guys know, loves to dance, and she is a great choreographer. So I was shooting a video for my song Brave Girl, which is yet to be released. And I asked Raina to choreograph for me, and we had a fun time. She had the worst time trying to get me in line, but we had a fun time with that. Anyway, I got to get back to the question. So before I left CBS, I was already becoming what I wanted to become. So you are always evolving. You are always in that space of becoming who you seek to become. It happens. It's in the same space at the same time. So for me, the whole thing was to just to do it consistently, to continue to build it and to do it consistently until I felt confident enough to go off on my own. it's so very important to have that support system. You said it. I had, my husband who understood my gift, who understood what I wanted to do.
And he's a great photographer.
Oh, yes. He's an excellent photographer. gcphotographers.com. And because he's a creative, this is something that is so, so important for us creatives, because I consider myself a creative and a lifestyle entrepreneur. And I think as human beings, we are all creative. We are created to create our reality. So that alone makes us creative. But marrying another creative gives me such freedom because he gets it. And the other day, my husband said to me, because I was going through this stuff, and I tend to be very impatient, and he is a Marine, so he has all the patience in the world, thank God. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, you know what, honey? I am here for you to fulfill your mission on this planet. And no other human being has ever said that to me. But having that support, having my husband say that to me and know that I am here for him to fulfill his mission in the world is so very powerful. That's why I think creative partnerships, even if it's a love partnership or an intimate partnership or just a friendship, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. We really have to look for those creative partnerships, because I was talking to a friend the other day and I had hit a roadblock, and he said, you know what? The only thing that changes things is people. So you could stay here, you could plan all day, you could revise that logo all day, you could make that headline all day, until you reach out to someone and work with someone, a lot of things aren't going to change.
That is so true. So do you think that it's important then to make sure you're not acting and working in a silo? Because I think sometimes as creatives, we can really, especially as lifestyle entrepreneurs, one woman shop, whatever,
Hello.
What do they call it? Solopreneurs?
Yes.
Is it?
That is not good.
Okay, so why not?
It's not good because I've been one, and it is terrible. What happens is this, and I'm the type, because I'm a writer, right? So I hibernate a lot. I go into that cave and I do it, and I'm all by myself. And there's a time and space for it. Stillness, being with yourself, is very, very important. But there's a time when you need to get out of that cave and you need to connect with people, because only people move the needle. And that sounds like a rhyme, but really, only people move the needle. And so you always have to be looking for the people that you can connect with, that you can collaborate with. And I've had this idea in my mind where I want to create a creative collaborative circle. I call it CCC. And it's a circle of women, women of color, millennial women of color, or entrepreneurs, or just women who are really building their businesses, kicking butt, and trying to get to that next level. Women who are always growing and evolving and able to support each other, sort of like a mastermind. And I don't know, it's so important to have that group of people around you and to co-create.
Definitely. So one thing I want to make sure that we cover, just because I think no story can be true without talking about some of the challenges. So maybe walk us through a major challenge that, although you've been pursuing and living in your light, what has been a major challenge for you, and how are you working through that?
One of the major challenges is to be able to envision the future and not get stuck in what I'm seeing in front of my eyes right now. Because, as I said, I know what I know to be true, but what I see in front of my eyes right now can sort of just put me off my track, right? Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things that I really have to always think about, always staying steadfast on that path. And one of my biggest challenge too is staying consistent. Staying consistent is so very important, because we all look for this big break, this big bang to happen. And the big bang is not going to happen, or that big break isn't going to come unless you keep on doing the small, consistent things that are going to add up and are going to create that result. So being consistent, and I am learning that when I work through my value and what I value, and I show up in a situation with a spirit of gratitude and giving, then I create more financial abundance than if I show up to the situation to say, oh my God, I need to pay this bill. So this is one of the things that I did, like while I was working at CBS and I was doing my little side hustle. When I was doing those things, I could afford to do things for a lot cheaper because I never approached anyone as if, oh, I need this gig. I need you to hire me so I could pay my rent. And you might not say that, but that energy definitely vibrates when you get out there. So I'm trying to stay in that energy, in that that positive energy of giving value all the time and just trusting and believing that it will come back to me in the same way.
So what are some of the things that you're working on now that you're really excited about? I know you have your challenges that are coming up. So maybe talk through what's next for Levantay.
Oh my God. Listen, I am the type that have so much going on. I have to just let me see. Let me put it together now. So, all right. One of the things this year I've been totally doing this getting out online thing because I'd had the private clients and now I'm going more of doing the online packages and stuff. So towards the end of the year, I have this huge energy of giving, like just giving myself away. So I am going to do my very first challenge, online challenge. It's going to be called Your Most Successful Week, and it's going to be live November. I'd have to look at the clock, but right now, if you go over to my website, you can sign up for my Most Successful Week or just join my mailing list and you'll get the information. And it's going to start the end of November. And during that week, I'm going to help you to organize your week and have the most successful week, even achieve more success than you've achieved last month, even last 3 months. And then that's going to lead into even something greater that I'm going to talk about. But that's one of the things I'm doing towards the end of the year. I'm also shooting the video for my song Rise Again, which is like an ode to coming back stronger after adversity. And so finishing up writing my book, which I hope to come out next year, and just all these things that's going on. Raina, why did you ask me that question? Right, because I can't shut up.
Let me ask another question then. I think this will be a good way for us to wrap up is what keeps you going when you feel like giving up? Because I know it's not always peaches and sunshine in Levantay land, but there must be times when you might be down or you might not be feeling as motivated. But maybe share that mantra, that thought, something that keeps your fire fueled.
Oh, wow. That's such an important question because you don't have great days every day. And for me, what keeps me going is, well, first of all, when I think of my mother and my mom and dad, both my parents, because if my dad listened to this and I don't say something about him, he'd be like, oh. My parents, they left me when I was 8 years old, but they didn't just leave. They always supported us, sent us money. I didn't see them for like 13 years because they were in this country trying to hustle so that we could be reunited. But my mother, she left school at 13 years old. She was such a brilliant young lady. She used to help my high school vice principal with mathematics, and my vice principal told me when I was about to graduate. But she came to this country and worked for this family up in Westchester, lived in their house for 5 days a week, took care of their children, washed their clothes, cooked for them on Thanksgiving so that I could get the education that I got. First in my family to go to college. So when I think about giving up, I think about my mother's road, the road she walked so I could, my mom and dad, the road they walked so I could be where I am today. Then I think about my sister who came home to take care of me at 22, man, 22. She was only starting to live and she was the best sister, mom, dad in the world. And then I think about my nieces. My sisters gave me nieces who were closer in age to me than I was to my sisters. And I think about the fact that I went to college, they went to college, they're out in the world doing their thing. And I think about, when I think about giving up, I think about what kind of example I'm going to set for them. You know, I think about my husband who has sacrificed so much for his family and country. And I think I see him going out every day in his uniform and I see his heart for service and I cannot let them down. When I feel so down and I just want to hide and cover my head under a sheet all day, I'm like, you know what? You're going to have to come out because these people here are watching. When I think about that child in me who used to perform on that little stage and see the grass floating in the wind and thinking it's people just swaying to my music, I think about her. I have to honor her. And so that's what keeps me going. I think about all the people who I came to serve. And just a little segue, when people give up on their dreams, when people wallow in unhappiness, and I know that there is a medical condition when people are depressed and everything, and that's true, and I honor that. But when you choose to be unhappy, it is a sign of selfishness. When you choose to not do what you were born to do, you are being selfish. You're sacrificing the thing that you came to do, and you are preventing that from reaching the people who you are here to reach and touch and co-create with. And so I feel like those are the things I think about. And that was like really deep philosophical stuff, but I really have to go deep because just like anyone else, I have it bad. You know, when you are trying to do a lot of things, when you feel like you have all these things to do, you tend to always feel that pressure of giving up just as much. It's like equal and opposite force. So, yeah.
No, that was deep, but I think it was something that a lot of us can relate to. So thank you for sharing that, Levantay.
Yeah, I tend to be so I'm so sorry.
No. So let's get into our lightning round. So this is the part of our interview where I'm going to give you a prompt, and I want you to tell me the first word that comes to mind. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Park.
Reset.
Reverse.
Reflection.
Neutral.
I think of meditation and visualization.
And last but not least, drive.
I think of momentum. Keep going.
I love this. Is like one of my favorite things to do is the lightning round because everyone's answers are always so different, but they're always so inspiring at the same time. So thank you.
I love it. I better come up with one for Levantay TV.
And last but not least, if you want to be a dream driver, you have to have your keys to success. So Levantay, tell me 3 things that you think every dream driver needs in their toolkit before they hit the road.
Listen, before you hit the road, you need a GPS. An internal guide that takes you on the journey you were born to take. And as I said, that GPS has to do with your promise that you made to yourself. Remember that promise. It surrounds the energy of you wanting to do something. So I wrote about this in my book, which is yet to be released during my MFA, but it was all about I was frustrated with this whole purpose thing, and I give an alternative to living your best life, and it's really finding that internal GPS, and it breaks down into several things. The next thing that I think that every dream driver needs to remember is to stay in momentum. The Big Bang didn't just happen overnight. Small steps brought you to that Big Bang, okay? Choose progress over perfection. Keep taking imperfect action. That's one of my biggest setbacks because I need to see everything in place before, and I overthink things, and I have to remind myself, choose progress over perfection and take imperfect action because that's what's going to lead to your dreams. The next thing that all dream drivers need to have is a champion mindset. And it's one of my freebies over on my website, levantay.com, where I do a champion mindset masterclass. And I have this assessment. It's called the Challenge Personality Assessment because your mindset is really, really attached to how you react to challenges, and you can find which side you fall on. It's based on growth mindset and grit, and it's a real good tool to have. You need to have that champion mindset so that when you encounter challenges, you are able to turn it into opportunities. And then mentorship. As I said, you need mentorship, you need a community, find your tribe, connect with your people. And I think those are the things that all dream drivers need to get to their destination. Most of all, I think you need to enjoy the journey because the journey is a true treasure and not so much the end destination.
I think that was the most, I'm going to sound crazy, the most perfectist ever. That was such a great way to end. And I really enjoyed talking to you today, Levantay. As always, we always have our conversations, even off these type of channels, just online or through text or on the phone. And I always feel so inspired and so fulfilled after talking to you. So you definitely are a person who vibrates positively around me. So
And
thank
you
you
do
so
too.
much.
You do. I'm so inspired by you. I'm so proud of you, Raina. And thank you for this opportunity to really, really, reach your tribe and to be here with you today. This was awesome.
Thank you. So that's a wrap for episode 48. Thank you so much for listening in, and I hope that you enjoyed hearing Levantay share her dream driving story and her personal keys to success. If you really enjoyed this episode, make sure that you subscribe to our channel so that you get more each week. We put out weekly episodes on Wednesdays, and sometimes we do minisodes on Sundays, so I want to make sure that you are subscribed so that you are getting every episode on time. For today's show notes, visit dreamsanddrive.com and click on episode 48. You can get more information about Levantay and some links to her site and her social media on the show notes page. I just want to say, as always, I appreciate you all. Dreams and Drive would not be where it is today. We wouldn't be 48 episodes in without you guys who listen every week. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Keep dreaming, keep driving. We'll chat again in episode 49. You guys are going to love it. It's with Yolanda Ross, the actress. I'm going to leave it there. You can Google her, but we're going to be speaking to her for episode 49. All right. Bye, guys.